real estate partnerships can be an incredible unlock for both quality of life and income, and the vast majority of them epically fail.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
Now I have a back pain, so
that's a good way to start the show.
welcome, back pain.
Welcome back to the Tom Storey Show, and happy 2025. It's a new year. We have a fresh start. It is very exciting. And our first guest of 2025 is our friend Braden Wheatcroft. He owns a RE/MAX in Victoria, BC. I think everyone there just drives an electric car about 20 kilometers per hour around the island. He's an overall great guy, and we've known each other for a long time. And I'm really excited you're here. So welcome, man. How are you?
Thanks so much, Tom. And just so you know, we do drive a lot of electric cars here, but if we see snow in the forecast, we don't drive. Like, people on the island have no concept of how snow and driving works. So we just prefer to keep our electric cars plugged in our garage and just stay in.
I made the joke, but I do have a plug-in hybrid myself now. So I'm kind of, but I can still fill up gas when I need it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
So for the viewers, how long have us three known each other?
Wow. Do you remember when your coming out party was? Because I was a fan before we were friends. I mean, you still don't refer to me as your friend, so I guess I technically still am just a fan. But I remember my first RI event was 2012 in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I think you might have been doing something there.
No, because I didn't get my license till 2014. So I was probably went to the event end of 2014. Spoke in Vancouver 2017, I guess. But you've probably known Steve, unfortunately, a little bit longer than me. But it's been a while. It's been a while for the three of us. And so for the viewers that maybe I didn't do really a great introduction, you own a RE/MAX office.
It was pretty bad, but we can.
Do you want me to cut it? You want me to try again?
I mean, we're 140 some odd episodes in. Why start now, Tom?
You know what? You don't want to peak too early.
Yeah, true. So for the viewers that don't know you, can you give me a bit more kind of background on what your journey's been like and why we're having you on this show? Because your perspective, I think, is very unique on the Canadian housing market.
I appreciate that. So the year was 1988. It was a dark Thursday on March 24th. Oh, wait, no, how far back are we going?
That's good.
No, so I just a quick synopsis. I got my real estate license in Nanaimo on Vancouver Island. In 2009, I was 21 years old and only could be taken serious if I was wearing my father's suits. And I worked in sales from basically 2009 all the way to 2017. We may talk about my switch from sales into the brokerage at some point in this interview, but my partners acquired the RE/MAX Camosun office in Victoria in 2014, and I started going down there a couple of days a week to help with some of the training and stuff that was going on. And just kind of hate to admit it, but I fell in love with Victoria, and that's hard to say as a Nanaimo guy because we kind of are like to heck with Victoria. And as soon as I got here, I was like, quickly became like, oh, I'm a Victoria guy now.
Victoria is the Toronto of the island. Like, everyone just hates it because it has everything. Is that why?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole because I'm a Vancouver Island guy, for the record. But yeah, my wife and I moved to Victoria in 2017. I became part of the ownership group of the RE/MAX office in 2019. And have essentially been doing that in some iteration ever since. My role has evolved over time. And of course, how I know Tom and Steve is I've been a part of the Richard Robbins community as an attendee of events since 2012, but I've actually been coaching for them now. It'll be 9 years this month.
Wow.
Which is wild, actually. But I was amazed that they still let me coach, and I was amazed they hired me in the first place 9 years ago.
I wanted people to know that you coach some of the top real estate agents, not just in BC, but in Ontario as well. So if there's any complaints about the real estate industry, really across Canada, it can just go directly to you, correct?
Well, it actually goes directly to my junk folder. Automatically gets deleted every 30 days. But yes, absolutely. Send me an email.
Okay, so let's talk about 2025. we just went through what potentially is going to be, I hope this is the truth, at least potentially going to be the craziest 5 years of real estate economic markets we've ever seen in our lives. We saw a pandemic. We saw rates drop like crazy. Money was free. Then we saw prices go absolutely wild. Then we saw inflation come in. Then we saw rates go, like, it's just been, and I feel like for the first time heading into now 2025, it kind of feels like, hey, maybe things are going to go back to what it was in 2018, 2019. I'd love to know your perspective moving into 2025 here. You can talk about your market, but just generally, like, what's going to happen here?
I definitely have my finger on the pulse of the Vancouver Island market more than the greater Canadian market. But of course, coaching realtors across Canada, I do get a sense from them that it seems like, I don't know when we're going to decide the COVID market is over. Like, do you have an opinion on that? Like, I know 2020 was scary and then crazy, and 2021 shattered all of the records for sales and listings selling above list. But then there was the fallout that happened, at least in our area, I'd say about mid 22 is when the tap started to turn off. And frankly, 2023 and 2024 from a real estate professional's lens has been a very challenging market to operate in. Is that still the COVID era? I kind of think it is. I think we're on the ends of that. And from a 2025 perspective, I have a optimistic outlook. But I say that cautiously because the last 2 years have been very challenging for a lot of agents and a lot of home buyers and sellers as well. And so I think we're not going to go to an amazing gangbusters market, but I do think we're going to have a better year in terms of sales volume than we did in the previous year. And I think you're going to see a little bit more normalcy enter. Our months of inventory right now are around the 5.5 months, which is that's a pretty balanced market to be working in. But there's still some irregularities in the system that I would kind of trace back to the COVID market. So I think we're almost out of it, but not quite there.
Steve, I just feel like the last 5 years, it's like, first there's the pandemic. We don't know what to do. Then prices are going wild and you're just buying property because you don't want it to get too out of hand. Like, people were buying based on fear. Then rates go up like crazy. Inflation's crazy. Now rates are coming down, but there's been no moment of like calmness where a buyer or a seller can go, all right, I'm not waiting for this anymore. Let's just go do this.
How long?
Like maybe that's now. Yeah. How long do you have to be calm?
Calm though, right? Like, how long does that have to be where you've gone, okay, this is normal now?
So I tend to look at things like agents will come to me, and I'm still licensed as a realtor, but I haven't sold real estate in I guess it'll be 7 years. Wow, time flies. And so I don't
about the same as most realtors, I think, actually.
Yeah, exactly. I don't look at the market on a per listing basis. Like, someone will come up to me like, "Oh my gosh, did you see what happened on ABC Street?" I'm like, "Man, I haven't looked at hot sheets in 5 years." I tend to look at it on a bigger, broader view. And so I love looking at the 10-year numbers. And if you're going to ask me some more numbers, I did do my homework. And so I like to talk in terms of 10-year because it smooths out a lot of that volatility, but it also smooths out a lot of the emotion that happens. Like you said, people were panic buying in 2021. Do you remember when people only wanted to buy a house that had a fully finished gym, an entertainment room, and like a quarantine washing station? Like, I'm not hearing those conversations as much anymore. But when I look at what was going on, say 2017, 18, 19, that to me is actually what I'm benchmarking my opinion on 2025 for, this sort of pre-COVID market. And I don't know about you guys, but on Vancouver Island, this still shocks a lot of my colleagues. The best year we've had in the last 10 years volume-wise wasn't 2020. It wasn't 2021.
Yeah, it's 2016.
It was 2016.
What happened then?
Steve, over to you.
If you read the YouTube comments, it's going to be, we were just importing Chinese money as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And there was some truth to that, but not to the extent of which Christy Clark would have liked you to have believed, to bring in taxes on a day and a half's notice. But that was a crazy market. Still to this day, my best year, not commission wise, but my best year volume wise was 2016 by a mile, by the way, by like 25%.
Yeah. So 2016 is always the,
Huh.
whenever, because often people will come into my office and they're in some state of being unwell, whether they're mad about the market or mad about their business and whatnot. And I often, like a thing that I believe in is fight fear with facts. And so I have to show people the numbers to go, I know it's tough right now. And also, we've been in markets like this before. Like when I got licensed in 2009, I spent the first 3 years of my career talking sellers out of listing their home because by the time they sold it, paid the realtors, paid their fees, had a breakup penalty in their mortgage, they would have to write a check for our commissions. And so I think about 50% of my listing appointments in my first couple of years were people saying, "Hey, thanks for the information. We're not going to move forward." And they, hopefully they would call me back in 4 or 5 years. So it's like we've been in difficult markets. Of course, it's a black swan for a reason. You can't see it coming. It's always a little different. And yet, I think when with enough time and distance, there are similarities that start to peek through.
I'm optimistic as well for 2025. I really do think the one thing that I'm certain on almost is the sales volume. I think there's absolutely no way that we don't sell way more properties collectively in 2025 compared to 2024 and 2023. I think those are going to be low years for the next 10 to 15 years. I really believe
But in the overall theme of what you're talking about, like that 2021 year is now going to be my career's equivalent, I would assume, to what a lot of people did in like 1981, 82, right? Where it took so long to get back. And no matter what you do, if you have a baby boomer agent, and I'm sure, Braden, you probably got a lot of them in your offices, they still go back and refer to that market. So that's going to be our major event market of our entire careers, whether or not we surpass pricing or not. For Tom, for you, that may have been the early 90s when that kind of happened, right? I don't think Toronto had the exact same effect in the
89 was our craziness. And then lots of other peaks along the way. But you guys were talking about 2016. Toronto was 2017. It went crazy at the beginning of that year. We brought in a bunch of regulation and then things cooled off. And then we're like, wow, it's never going to get back to those prices again. And then
we did that actually. We had 2017 was crazy as well. But for us, what happened was 15 and then into 16 was detached. And then when detached kind of tanked, the all of 17 and half of 18 were craziness. Like we went through 3 years of nothing but multiple offers.
And Tom, you just proved my theory that the Toronto market actually follows Campbell River. So the fact that it was popping in 2016 in Campbell River, and then the next year Toronto, it started to heat up. It makes sense. I feel validated. Thank you.
That's why I call Anita every week just to see what's going to come next in my market.
Coming next.
So we've talked about now just overall kind of where we think this year is going to look like, and hopefully it's a boring year with a bit more sales volume. We'll see how this plays out here. Over the last 5 years, though, too, we've talked about the real estate side. Braden, you've owned a real estate company in a market that I'm guessing 2021 was your most profitable year as a business owner of a brokerage because sales volume was so much higher. That's just a guess.
You're supposed to say trigger alert before you ask me questions like this, just so you know.
I know you can't give me financials. That's all I'm asking for. I'm just saying, no.
I mean, that time was very stressful. So just on a personal note,
got it.
October 2019 is when I became part of the ownership group. And I don't know if you know what happened less than 4 months later, but the world ceased to operate for, I will go down, it will go down in history for me, at least in my journal entries. March, April, May 2020 were absolutely terrifying because we, and you know what it was like. We had no idea. We didn't know what was going to happen. Like, are we ever going to sell a house ever again? and then, who predicted that June 2020, the market would shoot out of a cannon and just go on a rampage for 18 months. I don't want to bore you guys or your audience with how the brokerage models work unless you want to dig into it. But I would say it's what a lot of people don't realize this is that at least in our model, our RE/MAX model, our agents pay the same amount of fees to us, whether they make $0 a year, $100,000 a year, or $1 million a year. So actually, our clients who are the realtors had career years in 2021. Our brokerage did okay. It did okay. But you know what? The challenge was, and I can say this, transparently, like our profitability as a company went down because our costs skyrocketed.
Hey, real estate agents, I'm going to ask you a very simple question. Are you proud of your current website? If there's any hesitation in your answer, what I want you to do is go to realtyninja.com/Tom. They provide amazing websites for the real estate industry at an affordable cost. Steve has been using them for over a decade. realtyninja.com/Tom.
Staff became an issue. Inflation started running up. We have 5 physical office locations. It just became more and more expensive. So, I'm not asking for anyone to cry for me. But it is a thing that a lot of people don't realize is that when you have a model like ours, our success is not predicated on the success of the market. It's more on the success of the individual agent at scale. Right. So if you have 100 people on your roster and they're all struggling and not paying your fees, that's a problem. If you have 100 very successful realtors that are getting, meeting their needs and also paying their bills at the office, that's a great scenario. And so the market absolutely dictates that, but not to the same degree as an agent got to participate in the upside of that market.
When I first got my real estate license, I worked for a smaller kind of unknown brand in Toronto, and I only lasted there about 6 months. And then I changed to your arch nemesis, Royal LePage, and I've been with them for 10 years now. It's funny, when I changed brokerages that early on in my career, I sent out an email to my friends and my clients that I had at the time saying like, hey, I've changed companies, I'm joining Royal LePage. The amount of people that sent me like, oh, wow, congratulations, that's so cool that they would allow you to work for them email was, no, like seriously though, but I want to bring this up because a lot of people watching this have no idea how it really works. And I know the company I work for, they won't hire part-time people. We're a full-time, but a lot of brokerages will kind of take a chance on anybody. I know your model is not like that either, but can you explain to maybe everybody else why who your realtor works for is actually like your realtor is interviewing them more than the other way around?
Yeah, I think personally, and for the record, half of my coaching clients are Royal LePage agents with Richard Robbins, just so you know, Tom. And I've spoken at 2 RI broker owner manager events this year. So take that, buddy. We're like besties, okay? So anyways, I look at it as more like it's a mutual decision. I think it's a two-way interview. And you're absolutely right. Like some brokerages, just like some realtors or any business, we're going to have standards and not. For us, it is really important that people are coming into the industry looking at it full time. I think that's just a professional approach. Like, I don't know if you've heard this said before, but you don't try real estate tries you. And it's just so damn competitive that if you're not all in, like I always say to my new agents, I'm okay with you having a part-time job. It has to be real estate plus your full-time job of real estate. Like I want you to work 1.5 real estate jobs. Like that's how much energy you have to put into it in the first 2 to 3 years to really break through. And Tom, I lost my train of thought. What was the original question? It was,
you think what I was going to get to with this, what I was setting that question up for was we've put out polls on this channel and on my main channel many times. And I asked people,
does a brokerage matter?
Do you care who your realtor works for? And most of the response I found online is like, I don't care. I'm hiring them as a person. I don't even really know who they work for.
Yeah. I think, and I tend to agree with you. Here's what I believe to my core. A brokerage is not the gatekeeper of success. If you are a successful, entrepreneurial, driven, problem solver, ethical, all the things that go into being a successful realtor, you will be successful in any brokerage environment, period. I believe that to my core. What brokerages are, in my opinion, are amplifiers. So I believe that I can take someone in maybe, let's just use the example of where you started your career, Tom. I'm sure it's a great company in some respects, but if I can get you in 2 years in my brokerage with my model, with my brand, with my systems, et cetera, culture, if I can get you in 2 years where it would take you to get to in 10 years at another company, what could you do with an extra 8 years?
Right. And if you're Steve, it's like you only had one choice, only one place would take you. So you're just going to stay there for most of your career.
Well, it's funny. I like, as much as I'm a brand evangelist for Remax, obviously being invested in it. I didn't choose Remax as a new agent. I put on a team, and so like I literally look like I'm wearing a Century 21 modern day jacket right now with this gold mustard thing on. But like I literally, if my business partner had his team at Century 21 or Sutton or Coldwell or Royal LePage,
Yeah.
joining his team.
Right.
And it just, I'll, without sounding too biased, I'm very grateful in hindsight that he was at Remax, but I only know Remax because of him. But I want to circle back to your poll for a second, because I think there's maybe a bit of a flaw in the way we collect that data. Because I think
Wait. Are you saying the YouTube polls are not actually correct? Is that what you're telling me right now?
Not
because
just
YouTube polls and comments are the most correct thing on the planet.
No. Sorry. Let me preface that. All polls everywhere. Instagram, YouTube. What's the one that they do, the political ones? What Trump was down by how many? The whatever it is. Read.
I don't even know. Yeah.
Anyway. So I think it depends on how you plan on hiring your agent. So hear me out on this. We know that the National Association of Realtors, while they're still around, they do those home buyer and home seller surveys. And like roughly speaking, it's like 50% of buyers and 65% of sellers, when asked how they meet their agent, they choose essentially repeat and referral buckets. But it's, I worked with my previous agent, my realtor is my friend, or I got a recommendation to my realtor from my friend, family, or colleague. That those all clump together to be 50% for buyers and 60-ish% for sellers. Why is it higher for sellers? Well, because usually if you're a buyer, you might be a first-time buyer, so you don't get to say, I used my previous realtor, right?
Yep.
I believe that 100% your poll is accurate if that is the attributing source of that lead for the realtor. If it's a repeat and referral client, I think that the brokerage is pretty irrelevant. If you're going to call a realtor off of a call for a free home evaluation flyer, or you're going to interview several top producing agents, or so, part of their pitch to you will be hopefully their brokerage and why their brokerage differentiates them from the rest. I think that makes a difference. And so where I see it is our new to industry agents who don't have a reputation yet, they lean heavier on our collective brand. It's instead of me, it's we. And eventually over time, they're able to replace, well, we do this. Well, I've done these things. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, my opinion on this, and this is just a Toronto perspective, but I've seen the actual numbers. So I guess it's my opinion based on facts. But of the top almost 70, if the top 100 realtors in Toronto, based on people that actually do deals, 70% of them just work for 4 companies.
Yeah.
And it's my company, your company, and 2 other really good companies. And it's interesting because those 4 that make up the biggest percentage of people doing business are probably the 4 most expensive companies to work for on like what we pay our company in fees.
And of
it's
course,
interesting, right?
Well, this is not a recruiting appointment, Tom, but what if it was and you were to tell me that it's expensive? I would tell you it's expensive to work at the mom and pop shop.
Because you're not doing any business.
My objective in a recruiting conversation is really simple. It's to broaden your horizons from fixating on expenses. Profit is a function of revenue less expenses, right? And so even if I reduce your fees to $0 a year, Tom, it doesn't mean you're going to be profitable. That's why in our office, we focus on managing expenses and maximizing your revenue. That to me is what it's about. And so I've seen examples of agents who have joined our company who've paid 2 or 3 times more fees, and their earning potential has, and you can fact check me, I'll give you the numbers and they'll vouch for us, but their productivity within 2 years has doubled. You tell me if that's an expense or an investment.
Yep.
And that to me is like when I speak to broker owners, I like to jokingly say I'm having my Tom Storey moment right now within the Remax Broker Owner Network, because they're kind of trotting me around, putting me up on stage, getting me to say things.
So you've tricked them like I have.
Exactly. I tell them, imagine for a second that it was no longer provincially regulated, that a realtor had to work at a brokerage. How many of your agents would still be with your company by the end of the day? I think the fact that you are required by law to have to hang your shingle somewhere is frankly a shitty defense for why you should work at a brokerage.
Right. That's interesting.
I think to me, it's an investment.
I also think it's like perception from the general population of people looking to hire a realtor. Like, I remember when I put that poll on Instagram the last time I did it, I had a bunch of pushback from like quote unquote luxury realtors that would send me messages and saying like, hey, actually the brand I work at is a huge part of my business. People want to work with that brand. It's like leasing a Mercedes or something. Like, they had their reason for it. And then so I was like, well, I'm a numbers guy. I'll tell you, the two biggest luxury agents in the city of Toronto work for Royal LePage and Remax. They don't work for what these other brands are. So I don't know. I think perception's a big part of it as well, from the client hiring a specific person. Like, if I have a house over a certain price point, I might think one of these companies is who I have to hire because they have all the buyers. Not necessarily the truth, but that's marketing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, going back to, I think the brokerage is an environment or an ecosystem to help you become that best version of yourself. Man, I sound like I'm recruiting for the military now. But I really believe it to be true. I think one of the reasons why people have an implicit level of trust is, and where it shows up is at the kitchen table. Instead of having to talk for 25 minutes about the origin story of your never heard of before company, you can just get into focusing on the client and how you can help them. That to me is the biggest lift.
Steve, your clients still think you work for McDonald's?
No, just UPS does. No, I struggle with it all the time. I definitely struggle with it because I work for a lesser known. Well, no, I'm not a lesser known. I work for a
locally very well known,
local company. And honestly, it doesn't come up at all, ever. It's like not even a discussion. People want to know how much they're going to sell their house for, and they don't really care. I do think that there's the folks that work for bigger brands will use that in their presentation to try and get the business. And some people, I guess, care about it, but I don't care about it. And like Tom kind of led off with, people don't understand that it's like we are a customer of the brokerage. We're not an employee of the brokerage, right? So that's probably the part that's most misunderstood out there with the general public.
And that's why I've shifted my sights, because when I first got into the broker owner side of things, most of my colleagues in this role are I want to say twice my age, but like they're 20 years older than me. I'm 36 years old. They're mid 50s, mid 60s, and whatnot. And the game was different because back when they were in their prime, I would say to them, you were competing against middle-aged, overweight white broker from that brokerage and that one and that one. And we're all saying the same things. Work for us because we got great training, great brand, great culture. And, an agent would kind of pick the one that they felt resonated the most. Now in the new age where we have these, cloud-based companies where these middle-aged, broker owners are not competing with each other anymore. They're competing against charismatic, confident, social media masters, and those are the people that they're having to go up against. And so to me, it's a challenging situation for a lot of the establishment broker owners, because it's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. They don't have the tools a lot of the time to be able to compete with some of those younger recruiting centric brokerages that you're seeing out there. And so I've had to shift my focus from, it's not about what does the consumer think about your brand, even though arguably, objectively, we could say Remax is one of the top brands as far as consumers go, but like we'll say, hey, who cares about that? Maybe consumers don't even actually care about that. I have to focus on the experience of the agent in my company. That's the whole thing. If I can't prove to you that you will be more profitable, more productive, happier running your business within our ecosystem, then you shouldn't be here.
I want to shift the conversation slightly, and Braden, you can share as much or as we're pretty open on this show. We share lots. Steve overshares sometimes, but you've openly talked about this, and we can cut this if you don't want to. So just let me know. You're a very confident person. You know what you're talking about. I've seen you present multiple times, mostly virtually because pandemic and everything, and you always absolutely crush it. You have, at least from an outside perspective, you've got a great life. You've got everything kind of figured out. You're like this young phenom in the real estate market that's coaching people, that's running a business, that's doing all these different things. And I'm saying this ahead of you answering this because there's many people, for lots of people listening, that you look at that person, you go, oh, they got it figured out. Everything's good. Can you tell our audience what you went through recently? How maybe you're not fully over it, but how you're dealing with it. Maybe I'm talking too much. I'm just going to shut up and let you talk.
Okay, Steve, you go. Can you say nice things about me?
Can I say nice things about you?
Yeah, no, it felt so nice, Tom. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. No, sorry. I don't say nice things about anybody.
Yeah, I know. Listen, I'm a fan of the show. Okay. I know what's up. I just thought maybe I'd catch you in a moment of weakness. Yeah. So first and foremost, thanks for that setup, Tom. One of the things I have learned, and I'll tell you what happened this year specifically, one of the things I had learned is a big difference between self-confidence and self-worth. And I have come to realize in the last 9 months that I've had a lot of self-confidence for a long time, because self-confidence for me is predicated on what I can do, whereas self-worth is predicated on who I am and being worthy of things. And so I've had the delta between the two for me, and I didn't know this until this year, was really wide. And so the PR team has come up with the term, we've called it my unplanned unraveling, which is actually just a nice way of saying I had a total mental breakdown in February this year, and actually started last November when I had a massive, still to this date, the biggest panic attack I've ever had in my life, 2 minutes before going on stage at a Richard Robbins event. And if anyone wants to hear all the gruesome details, I did go in depth with on the Remax Power Moves podcast this last September. I shared everything, so I don't want to go through it all again. But I had a panic attack in November. Kind of chalked it up to public speaking, Tom. You know what it's like.
Yeah.
Steve, you know what it's like. You're on stage, 1,100 people. You're on a panel or 20 minutes by yourself. It's intimidating. But then I started having panic attacks regularly, including in like really small groups. And then on February 14th, while hosting my own sales meeting, which I've done hundreds of times and reasonably good at it, I had, as far as I can tell, 4 or 5 panic attacks throughout that sales meeting. And that's when I knew, like, okay, something was not okay. And so I went home that day and, basically didn't get out of bed for a couple of days. I thought I could type A, overachieve my way out of it. I'm like, I'm going to take a week off. A week turned to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6. And it was a real wake up call for me. I was struggling with panic attacks on a daily basis, crippling anxiety, like physical anxiety, like literally couldn't breathe beyond like my throat for weeks at a time. And then once I started seeing a therapist and I got onto medication, which I'm still on, she called it. She said, hey, just once you get your anxiety under control, just so you know, depression's probably going to show up right behind it. And sure enough, it did. And so I'd say I struggled with a lot of the typical symptoms of depression for about 6 to 7 weeks. And I could say for sure that February, March, April this year were the 3 worst months of my whole life, period, full stop. And then because I don't like to do anything, I like to do everything at its extremes. I can also tell you that June, July, August, September, October, November have been the best 6 months of my life. December sucked, for the record, but we can talk about that another day. So yeah, it's been a real process. I don't really do anything half-assed. I'm a full-ass kind of guy. So I quickly built a self-care team. I have an occupational therapist I work with that is essentially like a meditation coach is an easier way to explain it. She does breath work and guided meditations. I see a therapist regularly. My naturopath got me on an antidepressant. I go to acupuncture, massage therapy, chiro, like the joke around our house is I'm a shaman away from a self-care softball team. So I kind of attacked it with the same, vigor that I would anything that I do. And maybe that's why I've had such I would say a quick rebound, but it's not one of those things I would say it's over, I'm fixed, I'm cured. I think what it did is it brought to light a lot of stuff that I need to work on and work through. And so, I have no idea how long that's going to take, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to go through. I don't know how cliche that sounds, and I kind of hate myself for using these therapy buzzwords like authentic self. Every time I say authentic self, Steve, I want to punch myself in the face. I just want you to know that.
To be fair, Braden, I want to punch you too. Hey folks, Tom and his team are using a new tool from TRESAvideo.ca to help them explain Rico's information guide to their clients. And if you're an agent in Ontario looking to increase your transparency and trust with your clients in an easier way, you too can go to TRESAvideo.ca right now and get your own custom branded Rico Guide explainer video that can simply be added to your email signature, put on your website, or integrated into any CRM email campaigns. And if you go to TRESAvideo.ca right now and use the promo code TOMSHOW, you can save 20% off your purchase. So don't wait, go to TRESAvideo.ca right now, enter the code TOMSHOW on checkout, quickly upload your branding, and receive your new video from TRESAvideo.ca right now.
Yeah, no, I get it. A very punchable face at the best of time. And then I say things like, authentic self and intuition and, all that stuff. But it is cliche, but it is true. Like I am better today for the hardship I went through earlier this year.
Can I ask you, leading up to that, I've never personally gone through something like that, but I know a lot of people that have. Most people aren't willing to talk about it openly like you are, which I think is great because I guarantee there's several people listening to this that are going through something like that or know someone that.
Can I tell you on that for a second? Yeah. So it's a gift and a curse. I am a very transparent person. All the way back to like grade school, like my report cards would always like say I'm an oversharer, right? And so in February, when I was laying in the same sweatpants that I've been in for 3 days under a weighted blanket, can't even figure out how to turn on my own TV, really on the struggle bus, I was getting calls from my colleagues being like, where are you? What's going on? And I was just as open and honest in February, not knowing what the hell is going on as I am with you now. I have more information now. I've got better stories and bits that I can work in. But back then I was like, I have no idea. I can't even see straight right now. I've had, I can say with confidence, over 100 individual conversations with people that I've shared. And I kid you not, 9 out of 10 agents that I've talked to have said to me some version of, oh yeah, me too. Or, oh yeah, that happened to me once before, or oh yeah, like I'm on this med, that med, and it I don't know what the stat is. It's like 1 out of 4 Canadians struggle with mental health. I swear it's 9 out of 10 realtors do, and the one who isn't is lying about it based on my own like informal poll. This is better than a YouTube poll, for the record. This was 100 one-on-one conversations, and I don't want to make mental health a gender thing. I will tell you though, the amount of men that I shared it, and it was almost like when they were sharing it back with me, it was the first person for them to tell either ever or for a really long time. And so I've come out of this feeling a really strong responsibility to talk about this as openly as I can, because people don't freaking talk about it. It's wild, especially dudes.
And so like when this first moment happened to you, you then did a presentation on stage in front of 1,000 people. I was in the crowd. I watched that presentation. I would have had no idea you just went through one of the toughest moments of your life 10 seconds before walking on stage. And I want to say that because I guarantee you, especially like this episode's coming out in early January of 2025, it's still kind of shitty weather. It's dark outside. Like, life's like at its grimmest at this point of the year. There's people that you might not even know are maybe going through things that are going. I know this is a real estate podcast, but this is important. Like, I want to bring this up. Do
I mean, the mental wellness of your realtor is important. When was the last time a consumer asked their agent, how are they feeling today?
Call your realtor and see how they're doing. Is that
Hug your agent. Unless they're an introvert, then please don't. Yeah, man. I mean, well, so I have the video recording of the sales meeting on February 14th that was the beginning of the end. And I know the moments roughly of when I was coming. It was like a roller coaster coming in and out of these moments of panic. And I can't even tell by watching the video it was happening. So I think that was like a really big moment of, I don't know, like empathy, I guess, is like, wow, you really don't know what's going on. I mean, I can tell that something wrong with Steve right now just by looking at him, but that's unusual. Usually you can't tell.
On me, you can always tell.
I'm just kidding.
Steve can't hide it. His face just shows whatever he's thinking.
Oh man, I cannot hide an emotion on my face at all.
Yeah,
I can't do it. I don't know how to do. I mean, maybe at poker I can just look like a total asshole, but like everybody is like, "Oh, I know what Steve's thinking right now."
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Steve. That was mean. I'll take that back. We can edit that out. Don't edit it out. Don't leave that in.
There's no editing here.
Editor. What
This
are you talking about?
This is live. Yeah, so I think that that was a big moment of empathy to be like, wow, I lived that. I'm watching me, and I can't even tell that something was wrong with me. And like, you hear this from people, and you even said it, Tom, to a degree. You're like, oh, I could have not have told that you had gone through something like that. In a way, that's kind of almost a dig, or like I don't know how to describe it. Maybe it's not a dig. It's like, it's just, you kind of get sick of hearing that, because I would hear that from you. Oh, you would never tell that you're student, and you're like,
Right.
Yeah, that's because it's not a external issue; it's an internal issue. And so, like, being consoled over and over again that no one can tell, although I think that is well intended, it doesn't actually. It actually ends up having kind of almost a bit of an adverse effect, if that makes sense.
I appreciate you saying that, because it's weird in my mind. When I said that, I thought I was giving a weird compliment, saying you've done such a good job that I would have had no idea. So that's a very interesting perspective.
Diminishing of the hardship that person feels. Cause like, I think, we're kind of in the world of like, we need to see it to believe it. So like, I can't tell how much hurt you're going through right now. Therefore I just kind of default to, well, he doesn't have a cast on his arm, so I guess he's good. Right. And it's like, no, actually it's the worst he's ever been, but you can't tell him. It's just I don't know. I honestly, I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't paid tens of thousands of dollars for therapy so far this year. So anyway.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to bring this back to real estate here. I want to talk about first-time home buyers, actually, Steve.
Hang on. I got a question.
Okay. Steve has a question. All right.
I got a question first. How many agents are leaving right now? Because apparently in Ontario, it's a crazy amount.
I'm only paying attention on the board level, and we're starting to see a decrease in membership, but it's not quite as much as I thought it would have been by now. To be honest with you, I thought the expiration on licenses would have happened last year, and people have hung on longer than I anticipated. But I am hearing way more conversations about running out of money or running out of resources than I was, say, last year or the year before.
Interesting. Yeah, our board numbers are still increasing. I don't know what happens in the Fraser Valley board, but man, if you want to be a realtor, come on over.
Well, I have an opinion on this whole licensing thing, but maybe I don't know if we have time to go there or not. But Tom, what was your next question?
Well, no, let's go there.
I have a pretty strong opinion that the entire where's my tinfoil hat? The entire industry is complicit in the failure rates that we hear reported. 85% of realtors fail within 5 years. And I would also say, like, Tom, you asked me a loaded question in the prep email about reputation of real estate professionals.
Yeah.
Which we can kind of weave into this. And, I personally believe that we do not set real estate agents up for success. Partly to do is we make it too easy to obtain a license. And to me, there are way too many green lights from organizations. And I want to just say, this includes brokerages as well. But every organization, every regulator, every brokerage is compensated for having more licensees licensed. Last time I checked, I haven't gone to the UBC Sauder School of Business to try to order the licensing course. And they said, sorry, we've sold out for the year. They're like, yeah, give me $2,000 more. Absolutely. And then you get into the regulator standpoint. They're happy to license and oversee and be a watchdog for another licensee. And I don't want to, I don't want our associations to catch any strays here, but like BCREA and our board, and I love our board for the record. Both boards on the island do a great job, but I love the Victoria Real Estate Board. But their revenue is derived from membership, right? And then we get into the brokerages, those big bad brokerages out there, right? We want bums in seats is the old model, right? And so to me, I just don't feel like there's enough friction from start to finish. Everyone is happy to see another person get licensed, and I just think that ends up diluting the profession. And I also believe that it shows up in customer experiences, right?
Well, don't you think that's why maybe the overall real estate industry, especially on social media, if you look at any of the comments, isn't exactly in a great light, because we're allowing people to, it's hard. I don't even know how to say this. Like, it's like, there's so many people coming in that obviously if it's overcrowded, you're going to have a worse overall experience if you fall into working with someone that's not taking it seriously or doing it part-time, or, I could go on.
Yeah. Even if they're full-time and they're not reputable, though, like, that's another problem. Like, there's so much, if you think about the whole thing, you point out there, obviously the real estate companies, which I think are actually the least of the offenders. Personally, I think real estate companies are generally trying to do pretty good. Then you have the associations and the boards and the regulating bodies, all of which derive their incomes from how many members there are. Right. So that's not a good thing. But then you've got the other layer of the Competition Bureau in Canada, which does not want us as an industry to limit to full-time only. Right. So their idea is, the more people you have in the industry, the more chances you have that a commission model or a fee structure model will come out that is cheaper. Mm-hmm. And what I've specifically noticed, and I wish, so the real problem here is these levels of government are all different levels, and none of them talk to each other. They have nothing to do with each other. They're just trying to regulate it from their point of view. But the reality of adding in more and more people, particularly more and more people doing less and less transactions that are making less and less income, is the price per transaction, or the fee per transaction, actually starts to go up. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're noticing here in BC. I know, Tom, you might not have the same experience because the commission models are generally already higher in Ontario. But here in BC, from when I've started, they're about 0.5% higher now than where they were when I started in the business.
And that would be the opposite.
The government thinks it would be the opposite, right, but it's actually proving not to be the case, because now you've got more and more folks that are competing for the same amount of business.
Yeah.
Now, if you go the other way, you had a legitimate concern before, which was you end up with that old boys network and a closed. So there's no right or wrong way to do this, but we are bloating the system. And when you are bloating the system, you end up with, for instance, one thing I think could solve a lot of real estate problems is having extremely high fees at your brokerage, extremely high fees at your board level, extremely high licensing fees. Now, that is anti-competitive, however. Mm-hmm. So if you had really, really high fees, so only the top producing agents could make a way of it, the problem with that is that now makes the entry level harder, which people don't want the entry level to be harder because they want new people to come into the business. But if you don't,
do you mean the consumers want that, or do you mean everyone who benefits from having more people in it? Because you're saying they want more people in. I'm like, I don't know that the average consumer wants more realtors in.
I don't think the average consumer does at all. I think the Competition Bureau does, because that's their mandate, which is fair. That's their mandate. But their mandate is to not go, is the system better? Their mandate is to go, is there fair competition? right? So and then here's where it really goes. Once you are so big, for instance, your board is, I don't know, what's Toronto, 7 billion trillion people now. It's like 7 out of every 1 people in Toronto is an agent now.
You round down, Steve.
It's impossible now to pass a vote that would increase your fees, because 65-80% of your agents are working part-time, and the other 20% don't want higher fees either, even though it would be better for the consumer and for the professionals that are working. Now, what I said is not my opinion, and it is just the fact of what may or may not change the business. But it is a reality of the business. The business is bloated, and I'm not sure that serves the clientele or the public better. I'm really not.
So, as I mentioned earlier, there's an 85% failure rate in 5 years, which actually maps to small businesses if you read outside the industry. And what we started doing is analyzing the agents in our company who made it to their 5-year business birthday. And there was outlying reasons why some of them were able to achieve that milestone, but we were able to boil down a lot of those agent similarities into a number of points that we now, in a hiring point of view, will actually pre-interview people based on it. And if you're not a 4 out of 5 on our criteria, then we don't even have an interview with you. And so as of right now, like, our sit down rate with people to talk to them is about 25% of the inbound that we get. Like, just literally yesterday, I got an email from someone who, passed the exam, and they're all excited, and I'm happy for this person. But I don't know how their discovery call is going to go with my team, and whether or not we'll actually sit down and talk with them, because if they don't have the criteria in place, like, we're not interested in working with them.
And the problem in the system, though, is somebody's going to take them on no matter what.
Most people will. And so I'm with you, Steve. I think that, having more fees on the realtor side could work. I mean, that would obviously, from a broker owner, be an interesting proposition, but I still think having a higher bar to go over, including, I think, a financial wellness bar. I personally believe one of the biggest issues in the reputation of realtors is not most realtors. Like, I know I've got my biases here. I know hundreds of realtors and whatnot over my career. I've met probably thousands. I don't know. They're generally really good people. Like, most of the people I know in the real estate industry work really hard, care deeply about their clients, take the job seriously. The problem is when you get into the business and you've got no savings, no line of credit. If I say, hey, Tom, how long could you go without a paycheck before you start thinking about getting a part-time job? And you look at your watch and say, about 4 o'clock today, that's an issue. Because as much as I believe our fiduciary responsibility, like, I love the fact that we are fiduciaries for our clients, putting Steve's interests ahead of my own as a people pleaser. I love that. I want to put Steve ahead of me because it makes me feel good as a professional. But I think we're lying to ourselves if we don't think that we're actually inherently in a conflict of interest, because we are compensated when Steve buys or sells real estate, not from giving good advice and give good service. And so that inherently, like, when maybe a realtor who's well-intended and could have a great future is a month and a half away from not being able to pay their rent and potentially feed their family, and a client's asking Mr. or Mrs. Realtor, what do you think of this house? And it's not a good fit. What that person says in that moment of financial distress, to me, is a precursor for how well they're going to do in their career. And I'm afraid based on my experience interviewing hundreds of realtors, there's too many people that their buffer is whatever the limit is on their MasterCard. That's reckless. That's reckless. We're putting people in a position to help give advice on people's, we hear it's cliche to say, but like, most valuable asset, most likely. And they themselves are months away from having to get a job or leave the business. That's not okay.
I remember Taylor Hack saying that people should wear Hawaiian shirts until they reach 5 years in the real estate industry. So you're aware of who hasn't made it to the cutoff yet.
I mean, Keith Roy would still be wearing one, for the record. But
I don't know. That's kind of the other side of it then. So, I've put all the blame on big real estate. Now let me put the blame on the consumer. The consumer could have, if they decided, a cheaper model, and they continuously prove not to hire a cheaper model, because a much cheaper model could be a pay up front regardless of your
pay me a retainer and I'll list your home.
Pay me no. Well, here's the fee for each service, the photos, the a la carte system, and you're paying that no matter what. And you're paying me to negotiate a contract, and you're paying me to, whatever, schedule showings or whatever the case is, right? But at the end of every 2 weeks, here's your $1,500 bill.
Yeah.
And no consumer ever, because these models have sprouted up, but they fail within 6 months every single time, because every single consumer would rather pay $25,000 in fees if the home sells, as 100%. Opposed to $4,000 in fees if the home doesn't sell. Because we as agents would make a ton more money if I got paid for all my time. If I got paid no matter what, $200 an hour or whatever, I don't even know what a plumber makes these days, but if it was equivalent, a lawyer, not that, I can't compare myself to a lawyer, but...
Don't you normally say doctor? I thought.
I mean, I don't want to make as little as a doctor does now in BC. So
I have this rash I was hoping I could get you to look at. Could you, what do you think?
I just think it's like they can very much have that cheaper option, and they could support those companies, but nobody wants that out of pocket expense.
Here's a question for you guys, a little thought exercise. I'm intrigued by what Steve's saying. So think of your last 100 clients, and I wonder. So I got two questions. The first is, how many of them paid your fees from the equity in their home? So a seller lists their house, they pay Tom $10,000, $25,000. Is it 100% of them are paying?
Mm-hmm. Probably, yeah, all of them.
It comes off of the statement of adjustments, right?
Yeah.
So it's all. So that same list of 100, how many of them could pay you the equivalent of your fees out of pocket, not from the equity in their home?
Almost none.
Well, I wouldn't say almost none, but a much smaller
you are
percentage.
In downtown Toronto with all your fancy rich people on Bay Street. I'm in Surrey, where everybody doesn't have 25,000.
Where everyone's net worth is strictly just their house.
If you need insurance, you need to go where I go, squareone.ca. At squareone.ca, you can get a quote done in just a matter of minutes. If you're a tenant, landlord, or a homeowner and you need a policy, go to squareone.ca, or better yet, go to squareone.ca/The Tom Storey Show and save $20. That's squareone.ca/The Tom Storey Show for your discount on home insurance right now.
That's what you're saying.
It's the majority of it. It's the absolute majority of it. We don't get to see clients' bank accounts, but when
I learned more about clients when I was doing leases earlier in my career, when you're doing than I know now.
Well, when you're doing the double side transaction, so they're selling and buying, and then you ask them to come up with the deposit, and they're like, "Huh?" And you're like, "Yeah, it's a $1.2 million house. I need 50 grand, 60 grand we're going to have to put down on this thing." And they're like, "Well, how am I going to get that?" That's when people don't have any savings.
Exactly. And so therein lies the issue on the consumer model. I agree with you, Steve. It's like people would rather pay for the result and pay a premium for the result if a result is realized than pay out of pocket up front.
What if I tried to come up with that model?
We started a brokerage, right?
It's existing.
I'm just seeing if I can plan a way to go out of business by the end of the year. No, but that's like it. I think on an over the year, I would do better if all of my clients, not all of my clients, if everyone that reached out to me paid me for my time, I would do much better than the current model that I'm in.
Tom, I know you're the one managing this, but do we have more time? Are we done?
No, we got time.
Okay.
It's actually funny. The next thing I have after this is a buyer consultation. And before they had booked a call with me, Steve, and they sent me an email saying, "Hey, I'm really interested in talking to you about this. But I just want to know, what's your fee up front to have this conversation with me?"
Because they don't know.
And I said, "There's no fee.
$4.95.
All I ask is that if I've delivered enough value that you consider, interviewing me to to help you do what you need to do in the real estate market. And they're like, okay, great. So we'll see how the call goes. But right, some people.
Braden, you want to know what my call today was booked that I was telling Tom about?
CRA?
Somebody who that was earlier this year. Not kidding.
Yeah, me too.
It was a guy. Yeah, actually, the CRA came after every agent. It was like an advertising budget in 2021. They're coming after almost every agent across Canada. So everybody, you're on notice. I've talked to a lot of people about it.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought. Oh, my buyer call. It was basically somebody, I just bought a place last week. It's a pre-sale. I have no confidence in it anymore. And I think I made a mistake. What should I do? And I'm just like, cancel that call. You talk to your agent. That's what I said to them.
Yeah. Tom, you and I have indirectly talked about this question on and off over the years about advice for a first-time buyer.
Yeah.
I know we only have so much time left. I've got a call in about 14 minutes, but I'd love to take a swing at that one if that's okay. Or is there anything else you feel is pertinent?
I'd love to touch on that and then quickly touch on why you as a successful real estate agent stop selling real estate. I think that would be interesting too.
Okay, cool. So advice, I know, Tom, you and I are aligned on this, is I'm a huge believer of getting on the property ladder as soon as you possibly can, which means you will likely have to check your ego, check your expectations, and buy maybe a 6 out of 10 property instead of a 12 out of 10 property. And I want to share with you a quick little story. So in 2012, my girlfriend at the time, but my now wife, Mandy, we were thinking about buying our first home. And I'll be honest with you, as a 21-year-old realtor for 3 years who didn't own real estate himself, I was embarrassed about that. I always hated getting asked the question, oh, where do you, like people would say, where do you live? And they'd be like, where do you own real estate is really what they're asking. I'd be like, oh, we live downtown. And, you kind of skirt the question because I just didn't want to say I'm a renter. I felt bad about that. Not that there's anything bad about it, but as a realtor, it just didn't feel good. So in 2012, we're finally, like, my business is starting to get traction. It's like year 3. And we renting a house in Nanaimo for $1,100 a month. And we go in and see my one of my best friends, who's my mortgage broker. And we do the calculation and he's like, okay, awesome. So based on this, and this, like, you will be able to afford about a $450,000 house. Now, this is 2012. Rates were a lot higher than they were through the back half of that decade. And he did the calculation for me, and it was like $2,800 a month. Remember, I'm 24 years old. I'm just coming out of the recession. And I was like, well, that obviously includes everything, right? And he's like, well, no, your property taxes are this and that. And so I was looking at about $3,200 a month. And remember, I'm in the business. Like, it's weird. You can't be objective with yourself. Like, you can't, see the picture when you're in the frame, sort of thing. And I remember looking at Mandy and being like, I don't want to triple our housing cost. Like, that puts a lot of stress. Like, I already have so many expenses with this business as it is. And so I said, like we pay $1,100 now. I'm just curious, how much would that be in a mortgage if we wanted to stay the same price? So he did the reverse calculation, which I'm a big fan of people doing. And he said, oh, that would be about a $200,000 purchase price. So less than half of our buying power. And guess what we did? We bought a condo for $210,000. And although at the time we couldn't afford a very good quality mattress, I didn't lose any sleep in that place because I knew I could pay my bills every single month without question. And that property was our very first home. And 3 years later, we had the opportunity to buy in at Remax Camosun. We knew this was coming. No, sorry, 5 years later. And so we knew we were going to move down to Victoria. We ended up buying a pre-sale condo for $400,000 in Victoria. It took a year and a half for it to be fully built out. By the day that we took possession of our place, it was worth $500,000, and that's conservative numbers. And all we did was own the paper for a year and a half, nothing else. We pulled equity out of our condo. It was reassessed. We had it assessed at $285,000 in Nanaimo. So we pulled equity out for our down payment. That got us our $400,000 place, which we walked into. It was worth $500,000. And then when the opportunity to buy into Remax came up, I needed to come up with some cash. So we ended up selling that same condo in Nanaimo for around $315,000. Now, keep in mind, that's a place I bought for $200,000 in 2012. that in 2019 was worth $310,000. And we also pulled money out to buy another property that then appreciated by 20% before we moved in. None of those things, including buying into this company, would have been possible if I didn't get on the property ladder when I did. And so, like, for me, I can't encourage people enough to check the ego. You don't need the swimming pool with the inflatable swan for your Instagram reel flex. Like, get a place that you're comfortable in and ride that property ladder. If you can live there for 3 to 5 years, that is a proven formula for building wealth through real estate. And I just don't think enough people are willing to buy a 6 out of 10 because they want the 12 out of 10. Okay, rant over.
I was just before this, actually, I had another buyer meeting, and it was interesting. She had invested many places, actually worldwide, and was coming back to Toronto. And actually, Steve, a condo investor. So condo investors are a real thing again in 2025, apparently. Wants to buy a few condos with our team. And it was interesting. She was like more asking me a bunch of questions. Because even though I feel like I really have the experience, still, like, if I meet someone in person, they're like, "You're young." I'm like, "Well, probably not as young as you think I am." And talk to me for a bit, you'll see like I actually know what I'm talking about. But I think the thing that really stuck with her is I was like, listen, we do sell a lot of properties. If you look right now, if I gave you the spreadsheet and looked at like my personal net worth, you'd see a lot of it has been growing by buying real estate and holding it, not selling real estate, buying it and not touching it, or selling it to pay more money down on a mortgage or move it to something else. And so still, like, we all get caught up. It's been such a crazy 5 years. And I know there's already, Steve, there's someone writing a comment saying, yeah, but Braden, you bought in 2009 to 2012, and that market's not going to be the next 10 years. I guarantee no one thought that was going to happen when you bought that property. That's going to what happened. And so it's like, nobody knows.
Can I write my reply to that comment?
Sure.
You have a very limited point of view and strategy on your purchasing ability. For example, I have a real estate coaching client who had a first-time buyer in 2024 in Mississauga, pretty expensive, not be able to buy the condo on their own, ended up buying a house with a friend. They partnered on a sale together. I think to me, it's not a limit of resources, it's a limit of resourcefulness. So if you are not getting creative professional advice from your agent, like, you probably are talking to the wrong agent.
Steve, thoughts?
Oh, I'm just having fun listening. I just put out a video. I just put a video out on my channel about the property ladder and the right way to do it, which is exactly what you're saying. And
12 people watched.
Nobody cared.
Because when you put out good content where, like, this is how you do it, everybody's just like, I don't care about that. I want to hear about the crashing market. So then
and just to inject some humility into this, my wife and I live in an 856 square foot condo right now. We've been there for 7 years. We're very happy there. We actually probably will be there for 10 years before we move. And my dream property, as a guy who's a co-owner of a real estate brokerage, okay, here's my flex. We are the most productive real estate, highest market share in Victoria, which is arguably one of the most desirable places on Vancouver Island, and one of the most desirable provinces in BC, and one of the most desirable countries in Canada. And I live in an 850 square foot condo. So what?
You don't realize that 850 square foot condo in Toronto is like that's a big condo.
Yeah, it's a big condo. It's a huge condo. It's a mansion. And so even as someone who is a co-owner of a real estate business in this region, I'm probably 4 or 5 purchases away from what I would consider to be a dream property. But I think that's honestly has a lot to do with just our unrealistic expectations. That's a culture problem, I think. Like, it's like insta culture, right? So that whole idea of delayed gratification, I think is, Steve, do your next video on delayed gratification and see if you can get negative views. See if you can get sub-0 views on that one, because it doesn't sell. But I think I really believe it to be the strategy.
This might be a weird example, but back in the day, I used to play that game, The Sims. I know it's still a thing, but like when I was like young on a desktop old computer, and there was a cheat code you could use. I think it was Rosebud. Do you remember that? And it would give you.
When I used to play it way back, it was either function or control. and then you typed in, you held down function, and then you pressed funds. Funds.
Oh, funds.
So you actually would get, and then you would get a cash injection.
Yeah. That's
So-
what Trudeau does, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
But
the back in the day.
the point is, I would do that. I would get unlimited funds. I would build the craziest house in Sims, and then I get pretty bored of it pretty fast. When I got exactly what I wanted and could do anything, I got pretty bored of the game. It was more fun kind of building it up. It was like a cheat code. You would just get unlimited funds.
Okay, no. So what when I used to play back in my day on the Commodore 64, we would do that. But then if you did it once, you were like, okay. If you did it again, but the more you did it, like you got like an injection. It was like whatever, $500,000 every time you did it or whatever. Eventually, you would start having earthquakes and fires, and a monster would come ravage your country would, if you just took free money, eventually your country would totally fall apart. So
what are you trying to say? What are you trying to say here?
I think maybe Justin Trudeau did miss that game.
Roman Empire had a good 500 years. So
Steve, how often do you think about the Roman Empire?
Every
on
day.
a daily basis?
At least every day, don't you?
I mean, I do have a Memento Mori Stoic coin on my desk. You probably can't see it.
Blurry. It's blurry.
There we go. There we go.
Focus.
Nice.
You could leave left right now.
What do I have fun on my desk?
Lightning round.
Do I have any fun on my desk?
Braden, very quickly, you were successful selling real estate. You stopped selling real estate to get into the management side of the business. Why would someone in their right mind at the peak of their career stop selling real estate and go to do something that was probably more work for less money? I'm just making my own guess here.
A couple fact checks there. I would say I was reasonably successful. I wasn't breaking any records, but I had a really strong business. I also never wanted to end up in management, although management was a bridge to get from where I was to where I wanted to be, which was brokerage ownership.
Got it.
And to answer it quickly, this is such a cringe millennial thing to say, but I followed my passion. Steve, you can punch me in the face again next time you see me. You get two blows. Okay. I noticed in a day where I had, I guess what I didn't tell you is I was doing volunteer training at my brokerage. Because I was younger, I had this iPad, and the older agents who were way more successful than me be like, "Hey kid, what's that small TV?" And I'd be like, "It's not a TV, Rick, it's an iPad." And they're like, "What do you do with it?" And I'm like, "Run my whole business." And so before you know it, I was teaching workshops on DocuSign, Dropbox, and PDF Expert. I ran this little thing called Mobilize Your Business for a few years. And in a day where I had multiple buyer appointments, maybe a listing consultation and a training session, I was more fired up and looking forward to the training session than any of them. And so that is actually, that's kind of the through line in my coaching paradigm now, is like I get people to figure out like what is in their sweet spot, which is the overlap of what are you good at, what do you enjoy doing, and what grows your business. And spend as much time as humanly possible there. That is where you can be both happy and productive. And so that I kind of was my own guinea pig, I suppose. And it's still, even to this day, like I'm still iterating on that, like through my unplanned unraveling. You know what I realized? I hate the brokerage business. I hate the brokerage business. I love the people within the brokerage, the agents and the staff and all that, but I am not made for operations. I'm too much of a people pleaser. I care too much. I take things too personally. And so I have had to remove myself from operations. Thankfully, I have an amazing business partner who is like so good at operations. And so I had to take a step back from that. And now I'm spending more time coaching, training, creating resources for realtors. So like I have more job satisfaction now in the beginning of 2025 than I had in the beginning of 2024. Right?
Steve, as much as I love this podcast, I'm still going to sell real estate. Sorry. It hasn't taken over my passion. I still enjoy meeting with clients. That's my number one thing.
And I love that for you.
Your passion is meeting with clients or selling real estate?
Well, both. One leads to the other.
Okay.
The meeting with a seller or a buyer for the first time and going through the process, I would say, is the most excitement I get out of anything I do. And that's better than getting the offer.
If we get along. If I don't like them, I'm like, fuck off. Get out of my face.
Well, that's a nice way to wrap things up. I hope everybody's 2025 is off to an amazing start. 2025 is going to be the year that we all thought 2020 was going to be. That roaring 20s we were talking about, it just came 5 years later. Right? That's how we're looking.
Is it going to do a repeat? Bird flu? Here we come.
No, it's not. It's not going to be. It's not going to be what 2020 ended up being. It's going to be better. It's going to be what we thought it was going to be as we were heading into it. Braden, thank you so much for spending your time with us this morning. We appreciate it. We'll put your information below in case anyone has any complaints about anything to do with Canadian real estate. Sorry.
And check out my new podcast. It's called the Steve Karrasch Show. I can't believe that was available when I looked, but it was.
Did you buy the URL? You should.
100%. 100%. No, don't worry about it, Tom. We don't need to talk about it.
No, we do. We do.
Okay.
You have a podcast, and I'm saying this truth. I sent you a message when I listened to it. There's these shows that are unscripted and lots of fun and anything could happen. And then there's actual professional, really well done podcasts. You happen to have done one earlier this year. It's more of a real estate community thing, but can you give me the quick pitch on that for any? I mean, even consumers should listen to it because it's so well done.
Thank you. Yeah, just very quickly, it was a passion project. Honestly, it was my life raft out of my mental health crisis that I had. It's something I've wanted to do for years. And it was the answer to the question, what if NPR produced a real estate podcast? You know, a story-driven narrative, sound effects, the whole thing, you know, an actual story arc. And so we created that. It's a 3-part docuseries on the power and peril of real estate partnerships. Just in short, real estate partnerships can be an incredible unlock for both quality of life and income. And the vast majority of them epically fail, like disasters. The things I heard in the confidential interviews that I wish I could share with you, my goodness, make your head spin. So yeah, we did a 3-part series on that. It's called Reflections with Coach B. It's everywhere. I'd love for people to listen to it and give me feedback.
Well, maybe we'll be on season 2 when the power and perils of podcast partnerships, when this show comes crashing down because me and Steve have a feud.
Season 2 is in the works. We're working on, the working title is Can You Sell a Real Estate Business? So it's going to be on succession planning.
I like it. I will say, Steve, I don't think me and you have actually ever had a real argument in our friendship. Like an actual, like mad. I don't think it's ever happened.
I'm going to get pretty pissed off if this podcast keeps going on. So just kidding.
I hate to tell you, Tom, that's not necessarily a sign of a strong partnership because conflict actually creates connections. So there you go.
He's such a pushover. It doesn't matter. I can say
it's more just like, I don't care what he says. It's just like, I had someone ask me at an event I spoke at, they came up and they're like, I listened to that one episode. And like when you and Steve stopped recording, you must have been pissed at each other. I'm like, no, we like made a few jokes. I don't remember what it was. Probably got heated about something. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for listening. I hope you have an amazing start to 2025 and we will see you next week. Bye.